And we're live. So welcome again to another Sunday talk at the Nine-Sided Circle with your hosts, Mushtaq, that's me, and Kyle, that's her.
Yep.
There's Kyle. Say hello, Kyle.
Hi, everyone.
There you go. And Nick, you made it in tonight without trouble. I'm delighted.
Yeah, I
Yay.
think I found a way.
Yay.
Good.
You'll have to tell me what it is later so that I can pass it on to other people who might have trouble in the future.
I've been using, I open it in Safari and it automatically sends me to Hangouts. So
Yeah.
Oh, that works.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so tonight we are going to talk about practicing your practices. And there's Aaron. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
So, practicing. So, Robert DeRopp, who was a kind of a fourth way guy back in the 60s, yeah, interesting, crazy guy. He used to talk about the various traps on the path. And one of the traps that he talked about as being one of the most insidious was what he called the think-talk trap, where you think about the work and you talk about the work and you get together with your friends and you talk about the work and you write essays about the work and you sing songs about the work. You do all of these things, but you never actually do the work. And the work is very important. Miyamoto Musashi said, "The way is in training." As a matter of fact, let me find, where are you? We're going to make that go away. We're going to make this go away. That go away for a second. I talk to myself a lot. It's a curse.
It's a way to get intelligent conversation.
True.
Sometimes that's true. It's not there. Where are we? It's not there.
What are we looking for right now?
I am looking for something very important. And of course, it will be someplace where I can't find it. I just had it, and I can't find it.
Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, oh well. We will work on that at some other point. I will just have to kind of make something up in the future about this. God, that's so frustrating because I was just looking at it the other day.
Yeah.
So this happens sometimes. I will just get lost in trying to find something because I have too much stuff. Too much stuff can be a problem. Right now, could it be here? There it is. Aha. So years and years and years ago, Scott Sonnen and Steve Barnes asked me to do a commentary on the 9 principles of Miyamoto Musashi as given in the Earth Book of the Book of Five Rings. And they also wrote them, but I am not going to go into what they wrote. I'm just going to give you a little bit about what I wrote on the second principle, which is the way is in training. Because I think that I wrote something relatively intelligent. Here we go. When Musashi uses the word way, he is referring to a rather specialized meaning. The word in Japanese is do, and it is hard to give an exact equivalent in English. We can perhaps understand a little better by contrasting the 2 Japanese terms jitsu and do. Jitsu means art, technique, method, strategy, while do means path, road, or way, and implies a way of inner development. So while Aikijujutsu would mean mind, spirit, method, and give you a good technique for making people fall down and hurt themselves, Aikido would mean mind, spirit, way, and would suggest that you are working on inner development through making people fall down and hurt themselves. So when Musashi says the way, he means that set of skills that provide a structure for self-development, such as tea ceremony, flower arrangement, archery, or fencing. The important thing to remember is that pretty much any set of skills can become a do. It's all in the approach. Then we have training. What does Musashi mean by training? Again, it is a somewhat specialized term. Training, in this sense, is not just learning a skill, but continual refinement and integration. So when we train, with Musashi's understanding, we strive for greater and greater integration of body, mind, and spirit, of structure, movement, and breath. There is no theoretical upper limit to this refinement. It is incremental, and as one progresses, it also becomes more ephemeral. So when Musashi says the way is in training, he is speaking of an ongoing process of refinement that in one's chosen art. This refinement has no end to it, and this kind of refinement, in fact, evolves as you do. As you progress, there becomes less and less of the superfluous, leaving only what is essential. So that is a definition of practice for you. There I am. Did that make sense to you guys? Did I read it too fast? Did I read it too slow? One person got it.
Let's see some thumbs up if it worked out for you. Good. Yes. Okay. How about you, Nancy?
I think I've got it. Basically, you keep working on the thing, you can always make it better.
Yeah, that's part of it. And the thing that you are working on is your spiritual practice. So let's say, let me see, Aaron, you're a jujitsu practitioner, right?
Yep.
Yes. So if you are practicing a martial art like jujitsu, if you are really present in what you're doing, rolling becomes like meditation. It opens up a very powerful way to flow. And that becomes a practice. So you don't just go into the dojo and, do the stuff. You go in there and you actually put some intention in what you're doing as, this is my practice. This is like, this is my meditation. And it literally can be damn near anything. You know, I mean, the guy who does the flower arranging and the tea ceremony can end up being just as profoundly enlightened through that practice as the guy who does the fencing or the archery, or the monk who sits and meditates, because they all become meditative practice. And my sense is, and this goes back to the tradition in which I was raised, a practice of doing is more important than a practice of sitting. So you get more mileage out of the doing is the theory of my lineage. And so we put less emphasis on just sitting and meditating or doing that stuff, and more emphasis on the actual doing of a thing as the meditation. And it can be, I mean, pretty much anything. Michael Murphy wrote a book on golf as spiritual practice, for God's sake. And if you can use golf as a spiritual practice, you can use anything as a spiritual practice. So let's talk about some practicing. Yes, Kyle, did you have something to say? I see your microphone just came on.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, I was wondering how that lands for everyone in terms of like the stereotype is if you can't sit still in meditation, then you're bad at meditating, or you're bad at practicing, as it were. And
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to challenge that assumption. It opens the doors for a lot more people.
Yep. I mean, I have nothing against sitting meditation. I avoid it whenever possible myself, but that's just me. Some people really like it and they get a lot out of it.
I occasionally find it useful, but
yeah. And the people who like it and get a lot out of it should do it a lot.
Right. I guess what I intend to say is that it's cool to make more avenues known to people.
Yes.
Yeah.
The founder of my order, or the person from whom the name comes, made his living as a wood carver. And the thing that he carved most was spoons. And from the accounts, he carved the best spoons. It was like the entire essence of spoonness was in this piece of wood. You looked at it and you completely understood everything that there was to know about a spoon just from the experience of that one spoon. All spoons from all time were present in that spoon. And that's what you want. And it can be the same thing in anything. You know, all arm bars throughout the universe can be present in one arm bar. All arrows ever shot can be present in one shot. The essence of it can be in the moment of doing it. So practice. And that gets us to, again, I have to keep coming back to this because I worry that you guys are not going to be breathing enough. Breath is the first practice. We've looked at a couple of breathing practices, and today we're going to look at something else that is interesting about breathing. Did you know that you can breathe from anywhere in your body? What, you say? How can I do that? The nose is in the front of my face. I can breathe through my nose. I can breathe through my mouth. If I'm really, really talented, from time to time, I might breathe through my tear ducts. But from anywhere? No. How is that possible? And the answer is that it is possible only through awareness and intention. Intention, attention, and presence. Using these three things in combination, one with the other, you can breathe not air, but something like air through anywhere in your body. And we're actually going to practice that right now. We're going to be sitting here just like this. And I would like you to put your attention on your knees. And imagine as you inhale through your knees and you exhale through your knees. And what would that be like if there were a way to breathe through your knees? Now we're doing this sitting, so I'm going to be bored with it in mere moments, but you can do this walking. You can do it standing. Now, imagine that you could breathe through your elbows and what that would be like. Imagine feeling the air coming in through the elbows and out through the elbows. And this is a way that you begin to understand intention, attention, and presence in your life, because you need all three of these to make this work. You must intend to breathe through a particular spot in your body. You must have your attention on that spot, and you must be present with it. And then you allow it to create itself. For those of you who were here last night, we were talking about the first manifestation. This is that. This is how it goes together. The higher meets the lower in the middle to create an experience. So, I'm going to take you through a classic Sufi breathing exercise. And it works like this. First, you are going to find your root chakra. Y'all know where your root chakra is? Anybody who doesn't know where their root chakra is, say, I don't know. Okay, good. So you are going to breathe through your root chakra. You're going to breathe in through your root chakra. Now, this is going to get a little bit more complicated. Let's say we breathe in through our root chakra. So we go. And we're going to exhale whatever energy that was that we brought in into our right leg. Let it go all the way down our right leg. Then we're going to breathe in through our root chakra. And we're going to exhale into our right leg, all the way down to the tips of the toes. So we're going to breathe that into the right leg. Now we're going to breathe in through the root chakra. And we're going to breathe into our left leg. We're going to push that, not exactly air, but that's something, all the way into our left leg. And we're going to do that again. Breathe in and push the air all the way in on the exhale, all the way down to the toes. Then we're going to breathe in through the root chakra. And we're going to exhale into our belly, into the abdomen, all the way up to the rib cage. And we're going to do that again. Breathing in through the root chakra. And exhaling into the belly. Now we're going to do it again, and we're going to breathe in through the root chakra. And exhale into the chest. Filling up the chest cavity all the way to the shoulders. One more breath. And into the chest. The next breath is in through the root chakra and down the right arm. And again, in through the root chakra down the right arm all the way to the fingertips. Then in through the root chakra and down the left arm. In through the root chakra, down the left arm, all the way to the fingertips. Then in through the root chakra, and all the way through the throat. And in through the root chakra. Push it all the way up to the top of the neck. And then in through the root chakra. And all the way filling up the head. And then in through the root chakra. All the way up through the head. And then in through the root chakra. And use that breath to inflate the entire body as if your body were hollow and you were blowing up a balloon with it. Then in through the root chakra. And inflate your body again. So you actually begin to expand, and you might float off if you're not careful. And that is the exercise. This is something that is done at least once in the morning so that you can begin sensing your body. Now, this is different than feel your hand, let your hand relax. This is not a relaxation exercise. As a matter of fact, it will do the opposite of relaxing you. It will invigorate you. You'll end up, check now. Do you have a little bit more energy now? Maybe just, a little bit more energy wakes you up a little bit. So the method of this is you start at the root chakra. You start at the Hue point in acupuncture, and that becomes the focus of breath entering the body. And then you start with your legs and you inflate them with that breath. Then the abdomen, then the chest, then the arms, then the neck, then the head, then the entire body all at once. So that's a practice. Yes, Kyle.
Yeah, just noting that Sean describes it as a tranquil zest. That's what he's experiencing.
Yes, and Sean is very, he's evocative. We like that.
Yes.
And Dave says 2 breaths at each location, a minimum of 2 breaths. You can work up to 3 or 5.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah. But a minimum of 2. 1 is not enough. But as soon as you can, try 3. Why 3? Because everything is 3. 3 is everything. It's the magic number.
Seems to be.
Yeah. So now, this practice only has value if it is done. And it has the most value by being done at least once a day. Eventually, you get to the point where you do it 3 times a day. It's a centering practice. It gets you in your body because, as I have been saying over and over again, ad infinitum, your body is the only tool by which you have to perceive the universe. And it is the only tool that you have for self-development. No body, no self-development. So, thoughts and questions before I go on?
It's harder for me to imagine the exhale going up.
Interesting. Yeah, and I could be trite and say, yeah, that's why we call it practice, because you got to practice the exhale going up. But that would be cruel of me, and I won't do that. I will suggest, though, that if that's the hardest thing to do, then that is the area that you want to put a lot of attention into. And the way I do it is I think of it as a push. And this gets very Chinese. It's as if you're inhaling into your dantian and then pushing the air from the dantian all the way out through the body.
Do you want to remind people what the dantian is?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Dantian is a place in the body in Chinese medicine and martial arts that is located about 2 to 3 inches below the navel. And it's visualized as a small sphere, usually.
So that might help some people. For
Yeah.
me, I was imagining, we're using air metaphorically, but air moves kind of like a fluid, and it moves like in spirals through spaces. And I just kind of imagined it moving in that sort of way throughout the different body parts.
So now we talk. There is a concept amongst the Sufis called the insan-i kamil, or insan al-kamil, depending on whether you're a Persian speaker or Arabic speaker. They pronounce it slightly differently, but it means the perfected human being. By perfected, what they mean is someone who has transcended their ego and is awake. Back in the old days, they would say the perfected man, but this has nothing to do with gender. So the insani kamil is completely awake and free from compulsive, conditioned behavior. Now, I wonder who that person would be for you and what they would look like. If you imagined somebody like that, what would it be like? This is not a rhetorical question. Would it be the Buddha? Would it be Lao Tzu? Would it be Rabia? Would it be Mirabai? What would that person be like? And that person does not need to have a name, but if you could imagine that person, what would they be like? Who would they be? Male or female? Short or tall? Skinny or chubby? Now, various religions have a designated perfected being. Like Christianity has Jesus. Jesus is their equivalent of their perfected being. Buddhism has Siddhartha. Islam has Muhammad. So you don't have to buy into any designated perfected being, but it is a beneficial practice to find one. Why, you say? Why would I want to find one? And the answer is that the idea of that becomes a magnetic center for you to be pulled towards. If you have no idea, this is sort of a metaphysical riff on the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which basically says if you don't have language for it, it is very hard to perceive it. So if you have no internal language of what an awakened human is, it is very difficult to draw yourself towards that. Does that make sense? So when you have that image, I'm going to suggest to you a practice sort of like what we have done. But what you are going to do is you are going to breathe in through your root chakra, breathe out through your heart chakra, and send that breath to that awakened being. It's not like, this is called a breath prayer. And it has no words. It is not telling them that they're incredibly groovy. It's not telling them that you'd like a Mercedes-Benz. It's not telling them that you are nothing and they are everything. It is just making a conscious connection between you and the platonic ideal of the perfected human being, for lack of a better term. I don't buy into platonic ideals as a reality, but as a metaphor, it's pretty darn good. And so you spend a moment or 5 every day making this breath offering or breath prayer to the idea of the perfected being. And it is best done without words. Why is it best done without words? What do you think? Best done without words. Why for? Nick, tell us why.
My best guess is that words can't actually capture what you're going for. So it's best to use an image.
Yep. Words will tend to create limits. It's hard to get around the words, but when you, there's a trick here. I'm pulling a trick on you guys, and it is a trick to get you to start waking up your, what's called the higher intellectual center, because the higher intellectual center perceives without dialogue, without using verbal symbols. So I hope you'll all forgive me for tricking you into enlightenment here. Look, a bird.
That's very difficult to train yourself out of, using words to match experience.
It really is. And so with this, you use an image, a symbol. The image is actually a symbol with a feeling that is not an emotion, and that is using your 2 higher centers. So feelings that are not emotions and symbols that are not dialogue. Weird notes, Sean says. I was reading some material on Jackson Pollock, and he was intensely insistent on not providing any written or spoken words about both his earlier work or his later work. I can respect that. What can you say about a Pollock anyway? Like, damn, dude, did you spill something there? But yeah, artists like Pollock are best understood non-verbally. All right, thoughts, ideas, talk to me. One, two, three, four.
Dave, what are you feeling? I'm gonna pick on people now.
Oh man,
You can, yeah.
I'm feeling quite. I don't know what to say. This one is again at a very interesting time because I'm writing an article today that is somewhat related to what we're talking about. So
Well,
That's
there
it.
you go.
yeah, I think having done, let's say, within physical work, when I started, it was very much just doing it as a kind of mechanical activity, and then having certain things appear over the course of time, doing that, and also combining it with different types of work. I guess I can appreciate more of what people mean by when they say away now than when I was young and reading Musashi for the first time and go, oh yeah, like I know what that means. It's like there's a very clear distinction now. The young Dave did not know at all what he was. So now, like, not that this one does either, just that like I have a slightly better suspicion, like enough to keep quiet a lot of the time at least. But yeah, I like the idea of like particularly with the crafts and the manual aspects, and I appreciate very much like the studiness and people who can bring their whole being and essence into a craft or a performance or something like that. I think it's a wonderful thing, something to aim for.
Definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moshtak,
Yes.
do you have a recommendation of a certain type of perspective one must have prior to doing their moving meditation?
No, there is no particular perspective that I know of that we must have prior to the moving meditation, other than to being awake. Sean has just said something here.
Yeah, he
I think
says
language development proceeds from the experience. If I were to understand how Wittgenstein might put it, and we have a Wittgenstein scholar here in the room with us, so are you seeing this, Nick? Sean's comment?
I'm not seeing the comment.
Okay, let me read it to you here. I think the language development proceeds from the experience, if I understand how Wittgenstein might put it, that it is a problem of which the solution is the point at which the thinking is clarified.
I would say, I think he found later in his later philosophy that the experience does not determine a particular form of language. In fact, you can change your language and start to ascribe it to the experience to change the experience.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he clarified thought in the beginning, which he compared to he compared his language work to, in the beginning, he was more like streets and stoplights where everything was clear. And then towards the latter half of his life, he compared it to driving in the country, where there's really no roads and really no rules. And he said language was more like that than how it is in the city.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that answered his question or not.
Well, if nothing else, it's food for thought.
Hmm.
So, practicing your practice. This practice is designed to make you intentional. So, there's an Enneagram of practice, which I'm probably going to have to draw out. And the first part of it is to set your intention. Point 1 is the intention to practice. And that's your preparation point. Point 2 is your beginning to act upon your practice. Point 3 is the shock of awareness, presence entering your practice. Your practice becoming less, passing from the mechanical to the intentional, to the presence. Point 4 is your attention becomes completely absorbed in your practice. Point 5 is all of your crap comes up to distract you from your practice, and you get to fight it off, which is the resistance that makes the practice muscles stronger. Point 6 is surrendering to the inner meaning, the deeper meaning of the practice. Point 7 is practicing perfectly. At 7 returns to 1. Point 8 is a being that is polished by the practice. And point 9 is stepping towards the perfected human. So there is your practice Enneagram. And I'll draw that out and throw it up for you guys within the next day or so that you can have it.
Aaron says, yes, please.
Yeah. Well, it's good to actually see it on the Enneagram. And I will probably refine it a little bit because I just literally pulled that out of the air.
Vivian says, thank you. She's looking forward to it too.
Good. Me too.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the main reasons to have a practice and do it is to develop your intentionality. There is no presence without it. And there's no attention without it. Remember, these three things have to happen all at once in order for you to have the proper practice. It is the lower meets the higher to create the middle, or the intention meets the attention to create the presence, or the presence meets the attention to create the intention, or whatever. There's 6 different combinations of how that can work. Strangely enough, for those of you who might have been around last night. So practicing your practice, practicing to do your practice becomes an essential thing.
So in line with doing practices, Nancy has a question.
Yes. She says, is there such a thing as doing too much of the root to heart to ideal self prayer? It seems to come very naturally to me. I have not ever heard of it being too much. So I would say likely no. I mean, as my buddy Vince, who is a chemist, says, the poison is in the dosage. So there is probably, I mean, you can poison yourself with water if you drink enough of it. People die from that on a fairly regular basis, mostly marathon runners these days, because people tell them to hydrate all the time. So there is probably a toxic level of doing it, but I couldn't tell you what it was. And I think that the way to know that you're doing it too much is that the rest of your life is being left behind. So if that's not happening, you're not doing it too much. That's my answer.
Okay.
It's not the best answer, maybe, but it's my answer, and I'm sticking with it.
Mm.
Other questions about this?
How about you, Vivian? How are you feeling about all this?
I'm feeling fine.
Great.
Some of these things I already have done in a certain sense. The breathing through the elbows and the knees and things like that, no. So that was something additional that I will add.
That's fairly weird. Yeah.
No, everything is fine.
You can breathe in or out through anywhere in your body that you can perceive.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I-
You just have to be very careful
fear
when
that-
you're doing it, because if you're doing it in public and have this strange look on your face, people are going to look at you and say, "What's wrong with you?"
Yep.
So it's something I prefer to do in private, at home, behind closed doors.
Perhaps, yeah.
I was meditating on the bus coming home from work the other day, and I ran into a former student. They said, "Vivian, you look like you're in trouble." And I said, "Uh-oh." And I was meditating, so I was, really out of it. And this person didn't know, but I said, okay, that means I can't do certain things in public anymore without people
Oh,
speculating what's going on in my mind.
Yep.
So,
Oh, okay. Practice point 2. You mean on the Sean asks,
On the-
may I have a repeat for practice point 2?
yeah. On the
On the
Enneagram,
Enneagram?
that would be the actual engaging in the practice, the action point.
So
You start the
intention
practice.
to
You start
starting
with the
the
intention
practice.
to doing the practice, to engaging in it.
Mhm. You're welcome, Sean.
So that's pretty much everything I had to say tonight. And the floor is open for questions or thoughts or funny stories, or you can propose a toast, anything you'd like. And I'm just going to sit here and snack on peanuts until somebody asks me a question, because I have peanuts and I'm not afraid to use them. All right, so commercial time. Christmas is coming up. If you have friends who you really, really like, you should give them the Ultimate Enneagram course for Christmas. How's that for a commercial? That's at ultimateenneagram.com. So there is that. I am thinking that after I finish the after I finish doing the 3 forces and 6 processes, I am thinking that what I need to do is a 10-week course on how to actually do the Enneagram of Personality. Now, this will be interesting in that it will be considerably more in-depth than what I did on the Ultimate Enneagram course. The downside is that to do it right, I'm going to have to do it on a platform like Zoom. And that means that it's going to cost a little bit because that will cost me money to actually make it happen with a bunch of people. I will try and keep the prices as low as possible, but it's a consideration. After the Enneagram of Personality or the Enneagram of Fixation of Attention, I will probably do a 4-week seminar on ascending and descending octaves, because we've never talked about ascending octaves or descending octaves. We've only talked about the ascending octave, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, and not the one that goes backwards from that. But both are important and both are active in the world. And it's not a full picture of how everything is supposed to work unless you have both. That one will likely be done on this platform, and that I can get away with doing for free. So any thoughts? Is there anything that you guys would like me to do a seminar on? Anything at all?
Yeah, requests are not unwelcome, so don't be afraid to suggest things.
Yeah, I've gotten some of my best ideas on what to do with these things from you guys. So it's not like I'm so proud that I think that I have to come up with everything. So you all are familiar with the work in one way or the other. What would you like to know? The work.
The work. Yes. Aaron says some history is always interesting to me.
Yeah, history is good.
Like Sufi history? What do you have in mind, Aaron?
Okay, so next week.
History would be great, he says.
Yeah, I promised I would do that, and I have not fulfilled that promise yet. So next week, on this very, very channel, I will do at least part of the history of this path as I understand it, and how it originates in mythology. This will be both myth and history. The history I can trace back 1,000 years. Before that, I have myth because I can't prove anything.
Mm.
And the myth goes all the way back to Sumer. So we'll probably do it in 2 parts. I'll do history first and then myth.
That sounds good. I'm glad that excites you, Aaron. It should be fun.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Tell you about lineages and such things.
And Nancy says, how about something about attention and memory?
Okay. Are you making notes, Kyle?
Good call. Thank you. I will take notes. All right. And yeah, Vivian.
Sufism and art. Okay, so that's another thing we need to talk about is subjective and objective art. And I don't know, Sean, if you saw it, but Aaron put up a video in the cross-cultural fencing forum on Islamic art, Islamic geometrical art. Take a look at that as a precursor to that talk. Because that was actually quite well done. I was very pleased with seeing that. How about you, Nick?
I'm actually starting just thinking about the whole the imagination as language thing, because when you were doing the practice where you foresee the unconditioned person and then you breathe through your heart, I think this sort of language, it would have to work differently. Meaning would have to work differently for that as compared to regular language, because regular language pretends to operate by rules, which Wittgenstein kind of showed didn't really. But the imagination has to have more like artistic meaning to it.
Yep.
So I've been just doing that, and then somebody said objective art, and that kind of threw me off for everything. So
Yeah. Yeah, that was me. And objective art is defined as art that will affect everybody the same way, or affect everybody the same way according to their level of development.
So the
And there
effect
are
would
some,
be measured through behavior at that point?
it would be measured sometimes in behavior, sometimes in experience.
Okay.
It's like Michelangelo's statue of Mary and the body of Jesus in the Vatican is a piece of objective art. And nobody who stands in front of it is unaffected. And you can basically determine the effect that it has on people pretty clearly.
Okay. All right, I see that. Yep. That's good.
All right. Well, then I thank you all for coming and joining us tonight. As always, I have a great time doing these. I have found, I noticed today that I was actually really looking forward to this evening. And that's a good sign, because that means that if I'm interested, I'm interesting. What can I say? So, with no further ado, I will bid you all a good evening, and we will see you here next week. Take care. Bye.